It's 5:17 a.m. on a quiet Saturday morning in May 2018. The streets of Rainhill, Merseyside, are empty except for a man and woman walking their dogs along a footpath near the M62 motorway. The man, John Kinsella, is well known in Liverpool's underworld circles, a figure whose mere presence would make hardened criminals think twice about their actions. The couple follows their usual morning routine, the dogs trotting ahead as the sun begins to peek over the horizon. They've just passed the junction of Manchester Road when the familiar sound of an approaching bicycle breaks the morning silence. Within moments, 6 gunshots pierce the morning calm. The 7th shot, deliberately aimed and timed, ends the life of a man who had survived decades in Merseyside's criminal hierarchy. This incident sent shockwaves through Merseyside's criminal landscape and marked the violent end of one of Liverpool's most notorious underworld figures. The news of Kinsella's execution-style killing spread rapidly through the tight-knit communities of Merseyside. Locals driving to the nearby supermarket found their routes blocked by police tape, while dog walkers and joggers stood in stunned silence as armed officers swarmed the area. Police cordoned off the area as forensic teams worked methodically around Kinsella's body. The brutal nature of the attack, carried out in broad daylight on a popular walking route, left residents in shock. This wasn't a random act of violence. The precision and timing spoke of careful planning, and every criminal figure in the region understood the implications. The murder's location, near one of the busiest motorways in the northwest, seemed deliberately chosen. The morning's events had disturbed the delicate balance of power that had existed in Liverpool's criminal hierarchy, and everyone knew this was just the beginning. The roots of this deadly sequence of events trace back through decades of Liverpool's criminal evolution. The city's underworld had operated under an intricate power-sharing system, with territorial lines drawn as clearly as political boundaries on a map. Since the 1980s, Liverpool's criminal landscape had been shaped by various crews controlling different postcodes, each running their operations with military precision. The south side of the city operated under different rules than the north, with crews maintaining an uneasy alliance built more on mutual benefit than trust. The drug trade flowed through these territories like blood through veins, each group taking their cut while maintaining their slice of protection. Rackets and legitimate business fronts, money laundering operations ran through taxi firms, security companies, and construction businesses, creating a facade of legitimacy that helped maintain the status quo. But beneath this organized exterior lay a complex web of personal vendettas and business disputes. The involvement of Manchester and Salford crews had added another, the dimension to the already volatile mix. Kinsella's position was unique in this ecosystem. He had cultivated relationships across all territories, earning respect through both diplomacy and force. His reputation as a mediator made him valuable to those seeking peaceful resolutions, while his capabilities as an enforcer ensured that even the most aggressive players thought twice before crossing him. But this position of influence came at a price. It made him both indispensable to some and a threat to others. Born into a working-class family in Liverpool during the early 1960s, John Kinsella's early life gave little indication of the notorious figure he would become. Growing up in the tough streets of Merseyside, where opportunities were scarce and crime often seemed like the only path to prosperity, young Kinsella quickly learned to use his natural physical presence and sharp instincts to his advantage. By his teenage years, he had already built a reputation as someone not to be crossed. Local gangs noticed his potential, particularly his ability to handle himself in confrontations without drawing unnecessary attention. This combination of physical prowess and strategic thinking would become his trademark in later years. Unlike many of his contemporaries who burned bright but fast in the criminal world, Kinsella showed remarkable patience and intelligence in building his position. His rise through Liverpool's criminal hierarchy was methodical and calculated. Starting as a doorman at various clubs in the city centre, he built a network of connections that would prove invaluable. Club owners, businessmen, and criminals alike came to respect his ability to resolve conflicts without unnecessary violence. Though when force was needed, his reputation for handling such situations was equally well known. The turning point in Kinsella's career came during the 1990s, when he established himself as more than just another tough guy. His involvement in resolving a high-profile dispute involving Liverpool footballer Steven Gerrard demonstrated his ability to operate in both criminal and legitimate circles. This incident significantly elevated his status, transforming him from a local hardman into a figure of influence across the northwest of England. By the 2000s, Kinsella had become a key player in Liverpool's underworld. His services were sought after by both criminal enterprises and legitimate businesses needing protection or conflict resolution. He had mastered the art of walking the line between the legal and illegal worlds, maintaining connections with law enforcement while never losing his standing in criminal circles. His reputation grew beyond Merseyside, extending throughout the Northwest and even internationally. He became known as someone who could be trusted to handle sensitive situations discreetly, whether it was mediating territorial disputes between rival gangs or providing security for high-stakes business deals. Kinsella's word carried weight across multiple criminal networks. Despite his elevated status, he maintained a relatively low profile in his personal life. Unlike many of his contemporaries who flaunted their wealth, Kinsella preferred to operate in the shadows. He understood that true power in his world came not from visible displays of success, but from the ability to influence events while remaining largely unseen. This discretion served him well for many years, but ultimately couldn't protect him from the forces that would eventually lead to his downfall. By the mid-2000s, John Kinsella had become a dominant force in northwest England's criminal world, evolving from street-level enforcer to sophisticated problem solver. He handled everything from debt collection to territorial disputes. Unlike typical enforcers, Kinsella mastered strategic intimidation. His presence alone often sufficed, though his network could escalate pressure through economic or physical means when necessary. This approach garnered respect from both criminal elements and legitimate businessmen seeking unofficial solutions. His operations encompassed high-value drug shipments, protection through Liverpool's ports, and security for legitimate businesses facing extortion. His reputation was so formidable that his name alone deterred threats, creating an ironic situation where his criminal influence actually reduced certain crimes in his territories. His network included nightclub ownership, serving both as legitimate businesses and intelligence-gathering points. Crucially, Kinsella maintained neutrality across multiple criminal territories, enabling him to mediate conflicts effectively. This position, combined with his expanding international connections in the Netherlands and Spain, made him both indispensable and vulnerable, ultimately contributing to his demise. In late 2015, tensions in Liverpool's criminal landscape reached a critical point that would ultimately set the stage for Kinsella's murder. A series of violent incidents had erupted across Merseyside, breaking the careful balance that had existed for years. At the center of this chaos was a dispute over control of lucrative drug trafficking routes through Liverpool's docks, involving crews from both Merseyside and Manchester. The situation escalated when a prominent figure in the Manchester crime scene was shot outside a gym in Salford. The attack bore all the hallmarks of a professional hit, with the gunman escaping on a bicycle, a method that would later become grimly significant. The shooting sent shockwaves through criminal circles across the Northwest, not just for its brutality, but for its implications. The victim had been a close associate of Mark Fellows, a name that would later become intrinsically linked to Kinsella's fate. During this period, Kinsella found himself in an increasingly precarious position. His role as mediator between various factions had always been delicate, but now, how it became dangerous. He had detailed knowledge of the operations and personalities involved on all sides, making him both valuable and vulnerable. Intelligence suggested that certain elements viewed his neutrality with growing suspicion, believing he might be playing different sides against each other for his own benefit. The first direct threat to Kinsella came in the form of surveillance. Associates reported seeing unknown vehicles following him and unfamiliar faces appearing in his regular haunts. More concerning were reports of individuals asking questions about his daily routines, particularly his early morning dog walks with his partner. These were the first signs that someone was gathering intelligence for a potential hit. What made this period particularly volatile was the emergence of a new generation of criminals who showed little respect for the old hierarchies. These younger elements saw the traditional power structures as outdated and viewed figures like Kinsella as obstacles to their ambitions. They operated with a different code, one that didn't recognize the diplomatic role that Kinsella had cultivated over decades. By early 2018, the situation had become critical. Several key players in Liverpool's criminal landscape had been killed or forced to flee overseas. The power vacuum this created led to increased competition between rival factions, with newer, more aggressive groups pushing for control. Kinsella's position as a mediator became increasingly untenable as the traditional rules of engagement broke down. Despite warnings from associates, Kinsella maintained his regular routines. Whether this was due to confidence in his position or a fatalistic acceptance of the risks is unclear. What is certain is that his movements were being carefully monitored and plans were being put in place that would culminate in that fatal morning in May 2018. In the weeks leading up to May 5, 2018, John Kinsella maintained his usual routines, showing no outward signs of concern for his safety. Every morning, he would walk his dogs with his partner along the same route near the M62 motorway in Rainhill. This predictability, which would prove fatal, was observed by those planning his execution. CCTV footage would later reveal a black Honda CBR motorbike conducting surveillance of the area multiple times in the days before the shooting. The day before his murder, Kinsella attended a meeting at a local pub, displaying his typical confident demeanor. He spent the evening with associates discussing business matters and showing no indication that he sensed any imminent threat. Those who saw him that night would later recall his relaxed manner, suggesting he had no knowledge of the surveillance operation tracking his movements. That final evening, he returned home around 10 p.m., following his regular schedule. Security cameras captured him checking the perimeter of his property, a habitual security measure that had set. His partner would later testify that nothing seemed out of the ordinary. They had dinner, watched television, and planned their usual morning dog walk. Unknown to Kinsella, a sophisticated operation was already in motion. The assassins had meticulously mapped his route, timing his walks down to the minute. They knew exactly where he would be most vulnerable. The stretch of path near Manchester Road, where visibility was partially obscured by trees and the morning sun would be in his eyes. Phone records would later show unusual activity in the area during the early hours of May 5th. Multiple burner phones, later linked to the killing, were activated in the vicinity. The black Honda motorcycle was observed by security cameras entering Rhineville around 4:30 a.m., giving the assassins plenty of time to get into position. At 5 a.m., following his usual routine, Kinsella began preparing for what would be his final walk. He put his dogs on their leads, kissed his partner goodbye, and stepped out into the cool morning air. The timing was precise. The killers knew that at this hour there would be minimal witnesses, and the sound of the nearby motorway would help mask any noise. As Kinsella and his partner set out on their familiar route, the carefully planned trap was already set. The black Honda, which had been spotted conducting surveillance in previous days, was positioned at a strategic point along their path. The stage was set for what would become one of Merseyside's most notorious gangland executions. At precisely 6:45 a.m. on that fateful Saturday morning, Kinsella and his partner were walking their 6 dogs along the tree-lined footpath near Junction 7 of the M62. The familiar sound of the bike caught their attention. The rider, dressed entirely in black tactical gear with a high-visibility vest over the top, brought the bike to a stop approximately 12 meters behind them. Within seconds, the assassin dismounted, drawing a handgun from beneath the vest. Kinsella's partner would later testify that he immediately sensed the danger, shouting at her to run. The first shot rang out as Kinsella attempted to flee down an embankment. The gunman pursued methodically, closing the distance. Witnesses described hearing at least 4 shots in rapid succession, each one finding its mark with clinical precision. The attack lasted less than 45 seconds, but demonstrated all the hallmarks of a professional hit. The killer showed no hesitation, no emotion, just cold, calculated efficiency. After confirming Kinsella was down, the assassin returned to the bike with the same measured pace. Investigators would later note the shooter's tactical awareness, maintaining line of sight on the victim while retreating and scanning for potential witnesses. CCTV footage from nearby buildings captured the biker heading east towards Manchester Road, disappearing into the early morning traffic. The bike's route had been carefully planned, paths and shortcuts that avoided major surveillance cameras. The killer had clearly done extensive reconnaissance, knowing exactly which routes would provide the quickest escape, while minimizing exposure to CCTV. The murder scene told its own story. Shell casings recovered from 3 different positions indicated the shooter had continued to fire while moving, showing not just marksmanship, but tactical training. The fatal shot, delivered at close range to the back of the head, bore all the hallmarks of an execution. Forensics would later confirm that the weapon used was a .45 caliber handgun, chosen specifically for its stopping power. Kinsella was pronounced dead at the scene at 7:18 a.m. The clinical nature of the killing, the choice of location, and the timing all pointed to a meticulously planned operation. This wasn't a crime of passion or opportunity. It was a calculated assassination carried out by someone with military or professional tactical training. The investigation into Kinsella's murder launched immediately, with Merseyside Police's major crime unit taking the lead within hours. Detectives had established an incident room at St. Helens Police Station, coordinating what would become one of the largest manhunts in recent Merseyside history. Over 200 officers were initially assigned to Operation Trident, the code name given to the investigation. The first breakthrough came from an extensive CCTV trawl. Investigators pieced together the biker route using footage from private homes, businesses, and traffic cameras. The same bike had been caught on 48 different cameras, allowing detectives to trace its journey back to the Rainhill area, where it was first spotted at 4:02 a.m. on the morning of the murder. This revealed the killer had been lying in wait for over an hour. Forensics teams worked methodically through the crime scene, recovering 4 .45 caliber shell casings and mapping the shooter's movements. Ballistics analysis revealed the weapon used was the same type as one used in an unsolved shooting in Manchester the previous year, providing a potential link to a wider conspiracy. A major breakthrough came when investigators discovered a GoPro camera mounted on the handlebar of a mountain bike found abandoned 3 miles from the scene. The footage showed reconnaissance of Kinsella's regular dog walking route taken in the weeks before the murder. More crucially, it captured a reflection that would later help identify the killer. The investigation team faced significant challenges. Traditional methods of gathering intelligence from criminal informants proved difficult. The underworld had gone silent. Those who might normally provide information were either too frightened to talk or had gone to ground. Even with substantial rewards offered for information, the wall of silence remained unbroken. Digital forensics provided another avenue of investigation. Analysis of cell phone data revealed a pattern of surveillance. In the weeks leading up to the murder, the killer had used a sophisticated network of burner phones. But one crucial mistake, using the same handset twice, gave investigators their first solid lead. The evidence trail led detectives to examine connections with other unsolved murders across the Northwest. Patterns emerged, suggesting this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger campaign of targeted assassinations. This realization would ultimately lead investigators to their prime suspect. Within 6 weeks of Kinsella's murder, investigators had accumulated substantial evidence pointing toward Mark Fellows, a 38-year-old man from Warrington with connections to organized crime in Manchester. The breakthrough came through meticulous analysis of both digital and physical evidence, creating a web that slowly but surely tightened around their prime suspect. The GoPro footage proved crucial. Forensic video analysts enhanced reflections captured in a car window, revealing distinct facial features matching Fellows. Additionally, cell phone data placed him in the vicinity during reconnaissance missions in the weeks before the murder. The pattern of movements matched perfectly with the timing shown on the GoPro footage. Further evidence emerged when police discovered Fellows had purchased the same model bike 3 months before the murder using a false name. The bike was never recovered, but CCTV footage showing the rider's distinctive gait matched Fellows' walking pattern, identified through AI-assisted gait analysis. A search of Fellows' home uncovered tactical clothing matching witness descriptions of the shooter. More importantly, investigators found a Garmin Forerunner GPS watch. When analyzed, its data revealed that Fellows had completed a reconnaissance run of the murder route 2 months before the shooting, tracking his exact movements along the path where Kinsella would later die. The investigation also uncovered links to other unsolved murders. The ballistics from Kinsella's murder matched those from previous gangland shootings, suggesting Fellows was a professional hitman who had carried out multiple contract killings across the Northwest. The weapon itself was never recovered, but forensic evidence suggested it was the same .35 caliber handgun used in at least 3 other murders. However, the case against Fellows wasn't without its challenges. Much of the evidence was circumstantial, and his defense team worked to create doubt about the reliability of the digital evidence. They questioned the accuracy of the GPS data and challenged the validity of the gait analysis, arguing that such evidence was too new to be considered reliable in court. Critical evidence also emerged linking Fellows to organized crime groups in Manchester, suggesting the murder was part of a larger gangland feud. Financial investigations revealed substantial payments made to offshore accounts linked to Fellows in the weeks following the murder. Following Kinsella's murder, though the source of these funds was never definitively proven, in January 2019, after an 8-week trial at Liverpool Crown Court, Mark Fellows was found guilty of John Kinsella's murder. The prosecution had meticulously presented their case, with the GPS watch data proving particularly damning. Fellows maintained his silence throughout, never revealing who had ordered the hit or why, earning him the nickname the Iceman from the press. The judge handing down a whole life sentence described the murder as a cold-blooded execution carried out with ruthless efficiency. Fellows became one of only a handful of criminals in British history to receive a whole life tariff, meaning he will never be eligible for parole. The sentence reflected not just Kinsella's murder, but Fellows' role in other gangland killings. The conviction sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld of northwest England. The sophisticated nature of the investigation, particularly the use of digital evidence, marked a new era in the police's ability to crack organized crime. Several known criminals fled overseas in the aftermath, fearing they might be next in line for either assassination or arrest. The murder's impact continued to ripple through Liverpool's criminal landscape. The power vacuum left by Kinsella's death led to a series of violent confrontations as different factions sought to establish dominance. Police noted a significant increase in gang-related violence in the months following Fellows' conviction, as the carefully maintained balance of power Kinsella had helped maintain collapsed. More arrests followed as police leveraged intelligence gathered during the murder investigation. Several high-ranking members of organized crime groups found themselves under scrutiny, leading to multiple convictions for drug trafficking and money laundering. The investigation had inadvertently provided a window into the region's criminal networks. The case marked a turning point in how police approached organized crime in Merseyside. New specialized units were established, focusing on digital intelligence gathering and surveillance. If you enjoyed listening to this true crime documentary, make sure to subscribe to our channel. There is always another case to be uncovered.